What's up, everybody? Jason Messer here, editor-in-chief of Cheat Code Central, and it is officially in the bag. The final season premiere of Game of Thrones we are ever going to get. That's it. It's done. You will never get another season premiere of Game of Thrones, or at least this version of the series. Not counting prequels, not counting anything that's in the works. This is it. And wow, it was kind of I don't want to say it was underwhelming, because it's still Game of Thrones and it was still great after all of this time. This long wait. I mean, that was almost a year. We had to wait almost a year for that. I would probably call this a slow burn, is what I would call this episode. Nothing crazy dramatic happened, okay? And before I go any further, let me just say right off the top, spoilers out the wazoo on this stream, okay? Because I can't really dig into it too much if I don't tell you what happened. So if you've not watched it yet, and you're gonna watch it, it's cool. You don't have to watch it live. You don't have to watch this live. Go watch it. Check it out on demand first, then come back, watch this in our stream, like it, share it, do all that stuff. It's cool. But tons of spoilers, so this is for the folks who just finished watching it live. I should also say that this stream is live at 10:25 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, I was streaming earlier tonight when we covered some Star Wars stuff, and I mentioned that I didn't know when the stream was going to go live, because I assumed that being a season premiere, and because I had heard that the last season they were going to do extended episodes, I figured this was minimum an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I figured I didn't get a chance. I didn't think I was going to get to stream about it until at least after 11:30, maybe closer to midnight Eastern Time. And then the thing was only like 58 minutes long, according to my cousin, who told me earlier today. It's like, yeah, dude, it's not even going to be that long tonight. So I couldn't believe that. So that kind of sucked, because I was really wanting more because we waited so long. But that's typical with Game of Thrones. I never get enough Game of Thrones. The episodes always leave you wanting more, which is exactly what a good show does. They don't water down the content. They leave you wanting more. Unlike some shows, I'm looking at you, Walking Dead, that just drag on, and you're bored to tears, and you watch a whole episode and you don't feel like it doesn't feel like you get anything. With Walking Dead, that's the opposite. You get so much out of one episode. Did I say Walking Dead? I meant Game of Thrones. You get so much out of one episode. You can't wait for the next one and the next one. You need your fix by day 6 on Sunday afternoon at 5:00, and okay, tonight is Game of Thrones night. You're fiending for that next hit. So that's what this episode did, just like everything else. But if you're going into this thinking it's going to be like another Battle of the Bastards type thing, or another Red Wedding, it ain't that. This is kind of getting you back into things slowly. This is dipping our toe in the water. Brian in the chat said they had to give us their reunion before killing everyone. Yeah, that is absolutely true, and that's we're going to cover the reunion part of that. And I'm glad Brian brought that up, because that was actually going to be one of my other points. If I had to break down this episode into 3 points, the first point is what I just touched on, that it's a slow burn. You're not gonna dive right in head first and just going to be hit with action. This was a slow, methodical kind of getting you back into the season. Which kind of sucks, because from what I understand, there's only 6 episodes. So now we only have 5 left. And there is a lot of ground to cover in the story in just 5 episodes left. So I'm a little worried about that. But I'm sure they can pull it off, because 2 things. Number 1, the show is going to gradually start picking up steam. And based on the preview for the next week's season, it looks like they already have a pretty big battle lined up. Also, the episodes are going to start getting longer. They go to, I think, about 90 minutes, so basically about an hour and a half, I think about halfway through. So I think they're coming in slow, but they're going to end strong. So that's my first point. This is kind of a slow, methodical grind. Brian said, I heard episodes may be 2+ hours long. I heard that originally too. I thought it was going to be like, a couple hours. I was talking to my cousin earlier. He looked up a chart, and from what I remember him saying, the first I think the first half of the season are basically going to be traditional hour-long episodes. And then after that, I think it goes to about an hour and a half, 80 to 90 minutes, I think. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I think. But yeah, it's kind of a slow... It's not too slow. I keep saying it's slow. It's only slow by Game of Thrones standards. For a regular show, it was pretty fast-paced as far as moving the story along. It jumped around a lot, and it was interesting. It kept my interest the whole time. But I assumed it was going to immediately start with a lot of action and just ride it all the way through because the season is so short, because it's an abbreviated season. But they didn't do that, so we'll see how they pick up steam in the next episode. The second point is, I would say that if you are looking for the traditional Game of Thrones violent, gory bloodfest, this episode, again, is not that. Again, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you've already seen the episode, so I'm going to spoil something here. There was only one death in the entire episode, and it wasn't a main character. Nobody died. Everybody was thinking like, oh, something crazy is going to happen. They're going to kill off a main character right at the jump just to throw people off. None of that happened. Nobody of any consequence died. It was a little kid who was one of the houses that was supporting the Starks, and the Night King basically strung him up. Now, to anyone who watched the episode, you see that he's hung up in this design where like these limbs, he's nailed to the wall, and he does turn into a White Walker, and they kill him immediately, by the way. But he has like the Night King nailed up these arms around him, like literally cut off people's arms. When it caught on fire, did it look like the Targaryen symbol to anybody else? I feel like that was a message or something. I might be reading too much into it, but I don't know. Joshua said, I thought all the episodes were supposed to be 2 hours long. Yeah, me too, Joshua. I thought that because it was a shortened season, I'd heard early on that they were going to do basically like movie-length episodes every single one, but that's not the case. Anybody that's watched the premiere tonight can vouch for it. It was about 50-something minutes, and from what I understand, that's going to be the next couple episodes, so... And the other thing is there wasn't really a ton of White Walker stuff in this. They did the recap. They showed how they brought the wall down. There was a little bit with the Night King that was kind of implied on some things that they're setting up for the next episode. The next episode, you can tell from the preview, it's going to be very White Walker heavy, very Night King heavy. You're probably going to see Daenerys have to face off with her ice dragon against her two dragons. It looks like they are setting up the first big battle of the series, which is going to be when the undead army finally reaches Winterfell. So that's the second point. Don't expect a bloodthirsty episode, because it really wasn't that. There wasn't really a lot of that because they're kind of focusing on characters. This was a very character-driven episode. And so the third point, which is something Brian kind of touched on, if I had to sum up the biggest, I guess you would call it the most shocking part about this premiere episode, was the sheer amount of reunions. This was like the reunion episode of Game of Thrones. This is bringing everybody back together that you have wanted to see from the first season, the second season. It mashes them all together, sometimes caught like in some really awkward ways, and it really played out in a fun way in some scenarios. Other ways were super awkward. It was almost cringy. There was so many, so I'm going to try to remember all of them, and I may not even get all the reunions straight, but there was a shockingly long list of reunions. So to start the episode off, at the end of last season, we left with Daenerys and all of the armies essentially heading towards Winterfell with Jon. They arrive there. That's the opening of this season. The first reunion we see is Jon and Arya. They don't get together right away, but then they hook up later on, and there's the hug, and essentially Jon, from what I remember, and I haven't gone back and watched all of the episodes recently. I've seen the first 1 through 7 seasons recently, as like, maybe 2 years ago. I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch it all again, but from what I remember, John has not seen Arya since season 1. That I believe that's correct. Somebody can tell me in the chat for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Then you had Arya and the Hound, which was crazy because last time we saw them, Arya basically left him to die. And he even brings that up because it looks like there's going to be this awkward, or really you don't even know how Hound's going to react because as we know, he's a very unstable guy and he's prone to violence. So is he going to be pissed off? What's going to happen? And he kind of just shrugged it off. He's like, well, you're tough, so I guess that's why you're still alive. And she looked kind of relieved that, he didn't want to do anything more. But that was a crazy kind of confrontation. Then you had Arya and Gendry, which haven't seen each other since I think when Arya was on the run, when she cut her hair off and they tried to pass her off as a boy so they could hide her from the Lannisters because all the Starks were being basically considered traitors at that time. Then there was Sam and Jon, who, last time we saw them together was when Jon was first leaving to go beyond the wall to hook up with the wildlings to fight the Night King and the White Walkers to begin with. And then Sam, of course, went off to the Citadel. Then you had potentially a setup for Jon and Theon to hook up again later, because as you know, Theon is essentially, one of the biggest traitors to Winterfell and the Starks, and one of the reasons why a lot of bad stuff happened to them. And I'm pretty sure that Jon, the last time he saw Theon, pretty much told him, if it wasn't for my sister, I'd kill you right now. So how is he going to react to that? Because Theon rescues his sister, and then instead of helping her, basically says, look, I want to go back to Winterfell and fight for them, because you can tell he feels like he owes them that. He needs to redeem himself, and he wants to go back and fight for them. So they didn't meet in this episode, but you can tell that it's setting it up for that reunion, and I don't really know how that's going to go down. Probably not well, I would assume, for Theon. Then we had Sam and Jon and Theon. Let's see. Jorah and Sam, is that... No, wait, that's not right. Jorah is... Somebody help me in the chat. It's not Jorah, because Jorah is the guy with his fingers cut off. It's the guy who is in love with Daenerys. I keep blanking on his name. Somebody help me in the chat. But it was the character that gets the grayscale, and Sam has to cure him, and he basically does, and he's allowed to come back. So they meet again. So you think it's this really great reunion, and he basically brings Daenerys down to meet Sam, and it's a really cool scene until Sam finds out that Daenerys just burned alive both his brother, which he loves, and his father, who he doesn't really get along with, doesn't really like, but the point is it's still his family, and he's kind of crushed to hear that. So that gets awkward real quick, which that actually leads to the reunion with Sam and Jon. But yeah, it was super cringy. It was super cringy because it was a really cool scene up until, because Daenerys is basically saying, look, you helped. I'm blanking on his name. I'm gonna look up his name right now. It's gonna bug me to death. Hang on. Let's see. Game of Thrones. I want to say Mormont. Is that it? Okay, I was right. Jorah Mormont. Okay, so I had it right. Awesome. So yeah, Jorah is basically introducing Sam because he owes him his life, and then it gets real tense because Sam finds out he's basically crushed. He runs outside to kind of collect himself. And of course, boom, that leads us yet to another reunion, which is... actually, no, I'm wrong. So outside, Bran is sitting. Sam and Bran have seen... they met earlier. Yeah, okay, Brian said I was confusing him with Davos. You're absolutely right. I was blanking on the name. I thought Jorah and Davos... Yeah, I get those kind of mixed up, but I appreciate it. So earlier in the episode, I'm going to back up a minute. Earlier in the episode, Sam and Bran have the reunion because Bran has not seen Sam since, again, before the wall, when Sam had to help Bran go beyond the wall to basically do whatever it is Bran was going to do. I can't remember exactly what he thought was going to happen, but I know he felt he needed to go beyond the wall to chase the three-eyed raven from what I remember. And then that kind of led to that. So they have a reunion. Now, the reason that's significant, I'm bringing it up, is because then the reunion between Sam and Jorah, Sam gets upset. He runs outside. He runs into Bran a second time. Here's why this is important. Bran is basically waiting for Sam to come out to basically tell him, look, you got to go to Jon right now, and you got to tell him he's the rightful heir to the throne. The reason Sam and Jon then have their reunion, which is in the crypts of Winterfell, and right in front, literally right in front of Ned Stark's kind of tomb or statue, Sam then, who is pissed off about Daenerys burning his family alive, is essentially using that as motivation to say, look, you're the rightful king. You would have never done that. And then, of course, Jon doesn't believe him, and he breaks it down. He's like, you absolutely are. This is how it worked. This is your father, this is your mother. You have to accept that. And of course, Jon is shocked. So they with the reunion aspect of it, I know that they went into this episode absolutely kind of having this idea that the reunions of the characters was not only going to be fun fan service for people like us who are just geeking out and like, oh, wow, it's so cool seeing this character finally meet that character and that one and this one. And there's a big one coming up I haven't got to yet. There is probably the biggest one is yet to come. But the writers were smart about it. They didn't just mash up the characters. They went in and they decided, how can we use this as a plot device? How can we drive the story forward? So they used the reunion of Jon and Sam and putting Sam in a position where he's upset and now he's motivated to tell Jon the truth, instead of just saying, look, by the way, you might also want to know that you're the rightful heir to the throne. It wouldn't have had as much weight. It wouldn't have been impactful had now Sam not had that emotion, that drive to say, no, Jon, you are the rightful king. This person who has now wronged me and destroyed my family is not even she's not the rightful heir to the throne. You are. Now you have to do something about it. And so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of dynamic now that changes between Jon and Daenerys, because you can see that they were trying to, they kind of bait and switched a little bit in this episode. They showed you how close the two of them have become and how they may end up being together had this new information not come out. But this now has thrown a complete monkey wrench into it. Now Jon has to figure out, how do I deal with this information? And obviously, Daenerys is not going to like it. She's not going to give up power. She's worked the entire series to get to her position, and she's been one of the characters that has craved power more than anyone else, as much as probably somebody like Cersei. So it's going to be funny to see how that completely screws things up, because let's face it, it's Game of Thrones. If you get attached to something, if you think something's going well, you better hold on, because the floor is about to drop out beneath your feet, as it always does. So we're going to have to see if Jon and Daenerys finally kind of end up as maybe enemies or adversaries. Sansa obviously doesn't like her, and there was a lot of tension there. But by far, and I mean by far, the most dramatic reunion of the entire first episode season premiere. And again, it was short. They were smart. They saved it right to the end. As a matter of fact, when it happened, and I'm like, oh man, look at that. In my mind, I knew it was about to happen. I'm like, oh, it's going to go dark. And then as soon as it happened, boom, they went to the credits, because they left you wanting more. They only teased you with a little bit. If you remember at the end of last season, Jaime rides off towards Winterfell because Cersei basically tells him, look, we're double-crossing them. We told them we're going to let our armies march north. We're not going to do that. And Jaime's like, well, I have an oath. Jaime is kind of a rehabilitated character who now his honor and his word and actually being, living up to this code that he has is more important to him now than ever. So he basically says, I'm going to go off anyway, and I have to do this. I gave my word, I have to do it. So by the end of the season premiere episode, he arrives in Winterfell. He gets off his horse, he looks around, and he's kind of has this look on his face of like, wow, it's Winterfell. I haven't been here since season 1. And he's looking around, and he locks eyes with Bran, who's sitting there staring at him. And it's crazy because it calls back to the very first episode of the first season, and it completely bookends it with the very first episode of the last season, where Bran was this little boy. I mean, he's a small child, which Jaime tried to murder and threw him out of a tower. And now here he is, still alive, a full-grown man. And the look on Jaime's face is just shock, because he can see now that, number one, his past has come back to haunt him, because he's trying to be a better person. He's trying to be a different person. And now here sitting in front of him, I almost said standing, but that's not the case. Here sitting in front of him is this reminder of this, terrible person that he used to be. And it kind of calls that back up. The other problem he has is this is going to be one of the first times that I believe he's been around Jon since not only his father died, which Jaime kind of had a little bit to do with during that period. It's also the guy that Jaime, was at open war with his brother, and is kind of in some ways responsible for his brother's death, and has just generally been a thorn in the side to the Starks for years. So how is Jon and Jaime, how is that reunion going to play out? And then in the preview, we got a little bit of a snippet of what we can expect on the next one, which is something very interesting. It's a reunion between... Actually, I can't call it a reunion because they've never actually met. So that's kind of why it's not a reunion. But the next week's episode, we are actually going to see for the first time Jaime and Daenerys face off, which is cool because if you remember, Jaime, they call him the Kingslayer, obviously, because it was Daenerys' father that he killed. They've never met. They've never seen each other face to face. They've only kind of talking about, they've only spoken about each other to other people. It's going to be really interesting to see what that's like, because you have two dichotomies here. You have the fact that she seriously wants to murder him because of, essentially all of the bad thing that's ever happened to her, all the events in her life, and essentially what's happened to the Seven Kingdoms. It has all taken place because of Jaime and what he did in kind of stabbing the king in the back and allowing Robert Baratheon to take over. And this whole new chain of events he is responsible for everything that's essentially, any way she's been wronged, it's his fault. He was the catalyst. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is handled in juxtaposition to the fact that they don't really have time to be worrying about these family squabbles anymore. The next episode, you are absolutely going to see the battle between the Night King and everybody in Winterfell, or at least that's how the episode looks like. The preview is setting it up as. I could be wrong, but I mean, they need to move this along and get through a lot of stuff. So that I assume they have to have the first big battle in the next episode. So they don't really have time to spend dealing with Jaime and Daenerys' baggage and then everything else that's going on. They got to get their stuff together. They got to get on the same page and quick. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. But for me, if I had to sum up the biggest, most shocking aspect of this final season premiere, that like I said, we'll never get another one. It's just the fact that it's just so many reunions, so many characters put together, and it was awesome. I really can't say enough about it. I may even watch it again before next week. It was a really good way to kind of get back into it. I just hope that they can fit everything they need to fit into this season, because it's going to be jam-packed. There is so much to get to. There's so many storylines and branching characters and just everything they need to tie up. I hope they can do it, but the show has never really let me down before. So okay, so Joshua in the chat said something interesting. He said, where did Brienne run off to? Wasn't she supposed to be in Winterfell as well? That's interesting because, look, actually, perfect timing. You see the image right here, right there. in this box, right there. Look behind Sansa. If you notice in that screenshot, I pulled that randomly, but as I was pulling it, I thought the same thing that you did, Joshua. Over her shoulder, you could see Brienne in that shot. Now that looks like that is a shot of Sansa meeting Daenerys for the first time at Winterfell. She wasn't in this episode. Brienne wasn't. Now, I know she is supposed to be at Winterfell because last time we saw her, unless I'm forgetting some plot detail, she was at Winterfell and she was training Arya in sword fighting. And they have the shot that we just saw where she's there with Sansa. So did they decide to write her out of the episode because it was too packed? And to be honest, they don't really have much for her to do right now. She kind of has run her course in the sense that she was protecting, let's see, if you go back, she originally pledged her loyalty to Robert Baratheon's younger brother, not Stannis. Someone help me with his name. I can't remember it. He was the one that was married originally to Marjorie. He died. Then after that, she was, I think she pledged her loyalty to Catelyn Stark, then Arya, then Sansa. Renly. Thank you, Rob. Renly. Appreciate it. So Renly Baratheon. But yeah, at this point, she's kind of jumped around from person to person on this kind of like honor-bound quest. Now she's at Winterfell with not a whole lot to do. I'm sure when the battle starts, you're going to see her play a big part because that's one of the things she does best. She's a great warrior. But yeah, that maybe they just didn't. There's that picture again. You can see it in the thing. That is Sansa, Jon, and Daenerys with Brienne standing right over her shoulder. Now I can tell you, and correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody in the chat, if they saw tonight's episode, I didn't pay that much attention to the background. Was Brienne in the background of that shot? I want to say no. I want to say that the shot that we saw in the picture here is not the same shot that was in the show. I don't feel like she was there. So yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know. Maybe they just kind of wrote her off. Brian said, don't forget the dagger of dragon glass that Arya asked Gendry to make. He thinks that maybe that's going to be how the Night King dies. Yeah, that's a possibility. I'm digging that they have like a whole foundry of dragon glass weapons. I think that's really awesome. Because they gave the Hound a dragon glass axe. I thought that was cool. If Arya, I can kind of see where you're going with that because the Night King is known for his kind of like spear throwing and his long range weaponry because that's how he killed that's how he turned one of the dragons. And Arya, in addition to her swordplay, yeah, she's pretty good with the bow and arrow. So that would be cool if she tried to kill the Night King with a dragon glass arrow. That would be pretty sweet. She could probably do it. Rob in the chat said, I was excited to see Rhaegar kind of accept Jon as a possible rider, since Daenerys pretty much named the dragons after her brothers and her vision, and the vision her husband Khal Drogo had. Yeah, that is true. I guess I was surprised that they went in so hard on the Jon Snow as a Targaryen and now he's riding dragons. Like, I thought maybe they would kind of play that out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, he just hopped right on and took off. So, I mean, I guess they had to do it. Again, they have so much to get in and so many loose ends to tie up. I guess they couldn't really wait that long. The rumor from last season with there was going to be 3 secret Targaryens, which was going to be which Daenerys was one, then Jon, and then maybe Tyrion, which was the thing going around. But now that they killed off one of the dragons, is that really going to be a thing now? Could that even really work out? So I don't know. Brian said the preview gave me a vibe of what happened to Littlefinger. Dany will want Jaime dead and Jon will stop her. That's a possibility, because as we talked before, or as I said before, they introduced the aspect of Sam being pissed off at Daenerys and using his, I don't want to say he has a hatred. He's clearly emotional. So leading his emotions to drive Jon to take up the mantle of king means that Daenerys has to step down, which clearly Sam is now kind of the one driving a wedge between them. And we already have tension from Sansa because she doesn't like her. Everybody in Winterfell has given Jon crap for essentially giving up his throne and bending the knee and allowing her to come in as queen. So yeah, they could keep playing that up, and maybe there's going to be a thing where, you know, there's this tension between the Targaryens and the Winterfell people now. I mean, it's a possibility too. So. So in the chat saying, got the vibe that everybody wants Jon to turn on Dany. Remember, Arya told him to remember who his family was. Let's hope for the faceless man's return. Yeah, that would be cool. Now, I'm sure that you've read this rumor, and a lot of other people have already touched on this, but the fact that, and I would love to see this more than anybody else. I mean, I have a Game of Thrones hat on. I have my Game of Thrones shirt, and I have a Game of Thrones hat. Now, you might say, that's not a Game of Thrones hat. That's a Punisher hat. Well, no, it's not, because you see this skull right here? That's Ned Stark right there. That's Ned Stark. Now, the rumor I've heard about the Faceless Man is Ned Stark was a faceless man, and he didn't die in the first season. Now, as much as I would love to see Sean Bean come back, I don't know if that's going to happen. I would like to see it, but the fact that he's been gone this whole 7 seasons or 8 seasons or however long it's been, I don't even know what season we're on now. Is it 9? Is it 8? I think it's 8, right? Yeah, I don't see that. That might be one of the more far-fetched theories that Ned Stark's actually a faceless man, and then he just kind of went into hiding or became, you know. Yeah, I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. I'd like to. I think they can actually bring Sean Bean back in a flashback or some kind of vision or something. I think that would be cool. Rob said he just pulled it up. Brienne is in the scene. He just went back into the episode. Well, there you go. I mean, I didn't notice her, and I figured they would actually include her in an episode. So maybe they shot stuff with her, and it just got too full. But yeah, that's good to know. I'm glad she's still around. I mean, I definitely don't want them to just drop her character completely. I always liked her character, so. So Brian thinks that so Brian in the chat thinks that character named Hagar is the secret third Targaryen. I don't know, possibly. Listen, nothing's too crazy for me to believe at this point, because the whole Jon Snow theory that the fans had plotted out became canon. I mean, nothing would surprise me at this point. Rob said, I've seen a theory where Tyrion could possibly be part Targaryen, and that's why Tywin didn't like him that much. Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. I have read that myself as well. I was just talking about that earlier. And I could totally believe that, because of the fact that if you think back to how much Tywin hates Tyrion, it's almost a disproportionate amount. There's no reason for him to hate him that much. Even if he is, like, if he doesn't live up to the Lannister standards, he gives him so much crap. There's got to be something else going on. There should be some other source of resentment there. Now, if it's the fact that he really is not his son and he's the bastard of a Targaryen, then that would make sense. And he does come right out and say, "You're no son of mine," when Tyrion shoots him with the arrow at the end of season 5 or 6 or whatever that was. So, I mean, I always assumed that was meant to be like, you know, no son of mine would do this to his own father. So it was kind of like that. But if you want to take it literally, then maybe. Okay, so Brian thinks the character in the first or second season who trained Arya to be a faceless man, remember he had the white streak of hair, he could be a secret Targaryen. Well, that could be cool, I guess. My only concern with that is the fact that he's just been out of the picture for so long. He hasn't had much going on. Like with Jon, he's been a central character, and he's been under the assumption that he's a Stark, and he's doing all these... He's involved in so much of the politics and the battling, and it's always been, you're a Stark, you're a Stark, you're a Stark, or you're a Snow, meaning, you're not actually family, but Ned says to him in the first season, you're basically my son, whether you have my name or not. But then to tell him, oh, by the way, you're not this worthless bastard that nobody cares about, you're meaningless and you're worthless, you are the heir to the throne of the whole kingdom, all 7 kingdoms. That has a lot of weight, and it's kind of impactful for the character from Braavos to now show back up and be a third Targaryen. I mean, again, it's not impossible. It's just, I don't know if it might be hard to follow for some people, I think. He said he could be in the face of one of the main characters the whole time. That'd be cool. Wouldn't that mean one of them would have to have died, though? So, which character would it be? And I assume that they have to be dead for that, so... But yeah, nothing would surprise me about Game of Thrones. I mean, they are so good about swerving and doing stuff. And remember, there's a very specific Game of Thrones formula. They never have the big blowout episode at the end. It's never the season finale. It's always the episode before the season finale. And then the season finale is kind of wrapping up things. Now, I don't know if they're going to change that up since it's the last season and they have so much to get through. And really, it might be all out the window, because with the format changing, where they're only going to do, like, the first, I think, couple episodes are going to be an hour, and then they go to an hour and a half, how is that going to play out for the 6 or 7 episodes that they have left? But, yeah, anything can happen at this point. But the other thing is, if they reintroduce characters that aren't in the picture already, that's going to be yet another plot thread that's going to go off that they're going to have to then explain, and they don't have that much time. They really need to spend the real estate that they have, which is just these next 5 episodes, because I'm pretty sure I was told it was only 6 episodes this season. So if we're going by that, and 1 episode's in the can, and not a whole lot happened this episode, it was kind of setting some things up for the next 5. They really need to focus on wrapping some things up, because if they try to reintroduce characters and do other things, that's just going to be opening a whole can of worms, and I don't know if they can really spend too much time on it. So I personally would like them to just focus on what they got going on right now, because it's so much stuff. I'm worried. I'm a little bit worried. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit worried how this is all going to play out, and where it's going to go, and how they're going to wrap it up. But with that said, guys, I think we will wrap it up for the night. I appreciate you guys stopping by and kind of chatting some Game of Thrones. Again, this is kind of this is not something I would typically do for just like an episode premiere, but because this is the last episode of the first episode of the last season of one of the biggest hit shows on TV and one of my personal favorite shows, we'll never get another first episode like this. I mean, it's officially done. So I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Thanks, Brian. He said, good live. See you next time. Well, I hope to see you next time. I hope you check it out. And I really hope everybody watches Game of Thrones, because I am going to obsessively count down the days now to the next episode, and the one after that, and the one after that. Rob said in the chat, have you read the theory about Bran is actually the Night King? I have read that one. I've pretty much heard, I think, every Game of Thrones theory there is. I kind of believe part of that one. I'm not sure how. I've heard a couple variations on the Night King theory. The most compelling evidence is the visual aspect. If you just look at if you take a if you take a picture of the Night King and put it side by side with older Bran, like the one who is like it would be the Bran like all the seasons after the Wall, like after he comes back, he's older, he's matured. everything about the Night King looks like the character who plays Bran, but just with the makeup. His nose, his facial structure, everything. It looks like the same actor wearing the Night King makeup. That could just be a coincidence, and that's kind of where the theory comes from. But then there's also the theories about, maybe Bran time traveled and something about becoming the Night King in a past life or in a point in the past, and then it translates to the future. And it's complicated, but I can see how the theory really, it kind of makes sense in some ways, because since they introduced the aspect of time travel into this, which, how did that happen? I mean, this is a sci-fi, this is a medieval, like Lord of the Rings style TV show, sci-fi with aspects of now time travel and science fiction and zombies. I mean, I don't know how they mashed it all together so well, but they did. But yeah, with the time travel element introduced, we can see that things that are done in the present actually can affect the past, even though they're kind of like, it's just sight, and it's visions, and he's just seeing things happening. He also kind of projects himself into those scenarios, and if under certain circumstances, he can affect the outcome. That's exactly what happened to Hodor. That's what happened to, we see that one episode where he speaks in his vision, and his father, but the young version of his father, almost hears him, and he can't figure out where it's coming from. And then the Night King actually touches him in one of those other visions, because the Night King can sense him like in the vision, or he knows that he's there. So yeah, the theory is similar to that, and I haven't read too much into it, but at this point I think I'm gonna be done with theories. I'm gonna be done with reading anything and taking anything for granted, and I'm just gonna kind of let the show play out and just enjoy it as it comes. And then after it's over, we can kind of look back and see what was right, what was wrong. And of course, don't forget the Game of Thrones books aren't done yet either. So for them to, after those are done, we'll get to see kind of how George R.R. Martin's vision of where the show or where the story ends up, how that's going to differ from what they did with the show. So I think that'll be really cool. But again, guys, thanks for stopping by. Anybody in the chat, I really appreciate it. I had fun chatting with you guys about Game of Thrones. And if you're watching this back tomorrow, be sure to like our page, share the video. You can follow me on all social media at Jason Messer. I appreciate it, and we will catch you guys next time.